I myself, the producer of this podcast, is not eligible to diagnose anyone with a mental health disorder. This podcast is purely for artists discussing the mental health hurdles they struggle with on a daily basis. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Where Is My Mind, the podcast that dives into mental health and the arts. I'm host Christopher Orangeo. Today we have a special guest on. This is someone who I met through virtual acting class through the Parrish and Company acting school with Robin Parrish. I got to know her through 6 weeks. It's guest Lily Shaw. She's on here today to talk about rejection via auditioning, how actors feel rejected. She's very aware. A lot of these artists who I've been talking to are just extremely aware of who they are as a person. I think as an artist, that could be difficult sometimes. Lily was rescued and inspired by the magic world of movies at the age of 7. She's a purpose-driven powerhouse actress and an award-winning motivational speaker, which you could tell by our interviews. Lily is also an expert writer for Backstage Magazine and Medium, and has been published in Authority Magazine, Voyage LA, Shout Out LA, SEMA, and Thrive Global. Lily is also the first woman in her family to step away from the tradition to pursue a creative profession. Lily leads by example and empowers audiences to use their voice and own their gifts so they can authentically become who they were born to be. Lily currently hosts her own talk show on Instagram called Live with Lily. So without further ado, dive in and hear Lily and I talk about facing rejection as actors through auditioning. What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of Where's My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. Today we have an actress based out of Los Angeles who I've worked with, I could say technically worked with virtually in an acting class for Parrish and Company. I'd like to introduce you, Miss Lily Shaw. How are you, Lily?
Hey, Chris. Thank you so much. Yes, we had a lot of fun.
We did. You had two scenes in the class. Jordan and I just had one, and our one scene was a lot of fun with three of us. We were able to, specifically my character and your character really didn't like each other, so we were able to play up with that. And I do follow you on Instagram. You seem to be very active, very busy.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I want to say, first of all, that our characters were two opposite ends. So we really got to delve into those two points of view. So that was an interesting scene, and also an allegory that we got to say, this is what the past was, and this is where we're now heading into, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure when that was written, but yeah, it seemed like very much like women don't belong in the workplace. And now, I'm not going to say numbers, but my wife makes a lot more than I makes a lot more than I like. So if you think about the term breadwinner, I'm not it, and it's very, you see within my company a lot, both my bosses are women, you don't, I don't know. I've been at jobs where it was my buddy who was my boss, so it was just him and I. But yeah, I think that's really interesting that you brought that up, that the dichotomy of our character and whatnot. It was tough to act virtually with that. That's a scene where I would have loved to been in person, but I think we were able to throughout 6 weeks we were we got to stare into the camera, we got to intimidate one another. I thought it was fun. I remember my family watching it virtually and was like, oh, your scene partners were great. They saw Justin and I in the previous class, and then they were like, oh, my mom was like, that girl, because she's just used to Justin, or not Justin, I'm sorry, she's used to Jordan. And then she's like, oh, I love the dynamic between you three. I was like, it's rehearsing, but that was a lot of fun. No. She's very heavily influenced in the things I do, in the sense of just the work I do. She's always telling me theater, real actors do theater, which is, she's not wrong, but she could have said it a little bit nicer. Now I'm messing around. Yeah. I know. Yeah. It's movies out there. Yeah. So how long have you been acting?
Yeah, so to get back to your question, I've been acting pretty much since all the way through school. But formally, I would say like I basically graduated from college, got a bachelor's degree, and 1 week later drove out to LA to like do this professionally. So
Did you go to school for film and acting?
no, I went to school for finance, actually.
Okay. I mean, that could help with producing and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I because I didn't want to be or rather I didn't want to be a woman who didn't know money. So, and I wanted to do acting, and so I wanted to understand my own money and how to manage it. Not that I did a great job of handling it, but at least I wanted to have some knowledge,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, no, that's great. So how long has that been then, if you don't mind me asking?
Gosh, like at least 10 years at this point. Yeah, I'll have to sit down and do the actual math, but
Yeah.
definitely a decade, definitely.
That's long. No, that's I graduated college and I went to school for film in 2012, and I started late and everything, and that seems like an eternity ago. But like just being an independent artist, like post school, yeah, it's been almost 8-10 years, and it's been a whirlwind, and it's I don't know how. It's not for the faint of heart, and that's kind of goes into our topic we're talking about today. But I wanted to ask you, before getting into that, something I've asked all my guests so far is, have you been in therapy before? Are you currently in it? And what are your thoughts on it?
So, yes, I have been in therapy, but I have not been in conventional therapy where you sit down with a psychiatrist, I believe is
Okay.
what they're called, right? And talk to them. That has
Yeah.
not been my experience.
Yeah, you said you had a little bit different one, right?
So my experience with therapy was more spiritual. So, if you don't mind a long-winded answer,
No, not at all.
so I, came out to LA and immediately got into the phase of this is, before Me Too. So the whole discrimination and the misogyny aspect
Was
was
alive and well.
at an all-time high. So
And you were probably getting a lot of it because you're not just your woman, but you're like a woman of color, and I'm sure you got a lot of stereotypes, which is something you can dive into. I'm sure, but yeah. So you were it was at the height of, or it was right before Me Too, where yeah, like everyone was just insensitive about all of it.
and like there weren't, I mean, when I first started, I don't think there were that many famous Indian actors anyways. I mean, I don't think Big Bang Theory was on TV yet. So I think you're right in that I definitely got an extra dose of being excluded,
Yeah, I'm
to put it
sure.
mildly. And being a woman also, and being a woman of color, like you said, you're kind of expected not to have any identity of your own. You're kind of expected to go along to get along. And that was a huge problem for me because I had not really been raised in that capacity. I'd been raised to think for myself in a more feminist capacity by my mom. So that there was an immediate clash of who I was and what the world was expecting me to be.
Hmm.
And eventually, what I realized is that, to my mind, and this could be right or wrong, but to my mind, it felt like the world was asking me to be less than who I was. And it really really messed with me. So I realized that what I wanted, which was a successful film TV career, was not going to come to me in the standard way, right, where you go to auditions and you do a good job, and eventually you get cast, right? Immediately I got this intuitive hit that that wasn't really going to be my way. So I started searching for a different way. And in that search, a fellow actor of mine actually gave me a DVD at the time. Yes, this was a DVD thing, of The Secret. And The Secret became the door that opened, and all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, there is a way where I can actually live from a place of creation versus competition, that I can, sort of
Okay.
chalk out my own path rather than like be in this dogfight of, let me throw everybody out of the way so I can get mine. That kind of toxic masculinity versus and even like racial crap. versus what like I was being called to do, which was to elevate the game that I was in, to elevate to have a career that I could be proud of, really. So that started my journey, and the spiritual, and I call it spiritual therapy. The spiritual therapy aspect of it is that you keep working on yourself, right? So the idea is that every time you try to do something, and you encounter resistance and you encounter hatred, you don't want to blame, punish the other person, because that's the first instinct, right? You want to be upset at the other person. What you really want to do in spiritual therapy is that you go back and you correct whatever it is that's within you that's inviting that external experience. So that was my therapy, where I got more and more involved with aligning myself to my truth rather than getting busy blaming.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's like you said. That's more of a um, it's a different approach to therapy. You know, you were trying to find your place and all that, and you were dealing with it. You know, you're dealing with it differently because you're coming from a different world than Hollywood or movies or anything of that is used to. Really, you know, we all as actors we all get some sort of stereotyping on some scale. Like mine is never going to be as bad as yours. Like that because I'm a white straight guy. I'm Italian, so they can like put me in a they can put me in a box of like, oh, you could do mob stuff, or you could just be this big goon in the back, or and I'm on a very small scale of what I do, but I would like to on in my small world, I would like to break those stereotypes. You know, I'm 6'1", I'm more on the heavier side. I don't know if you would ever see a leading man like that, really, or like hypothetically, if you and I were starring in a movie like 10, 12 years ago, they'd be like, oh, these two couldn't do a lead, and couldn't be leads in movies, I'm sure you get it, you were getting it, or you still do receive it, hopefully not, but any stereotypes, while you're, auditioning or while you're doing this or anything of that nature.
I honestly would have been completely fine with that kind of a distinction, where it's like, oh, in my case it was like, oh, you're Indian, and so you're, I don't know, like you want to be a doctor, like I would have been fine if if that was the stereotype that I was being asked to step into. What I was being asked to was, you can't predict, to fit into the mold of an immigrant, which was, oh, I've never read a book. Oh my God, literally, like, you couldn't pretend that you have that you've educated yourself, that you can read a book, that you can hold a conversation. Every time, I remember every time I would try to give out my opinion, I literally would get interrupted. And it didn't matter what room I was in, it didn't matter who I was talking to, even my own people who were like my own managers and agents and all of that stuff. You would think that they would be interested in hearing what I had to say. They were not. They needed me to fill a box and not be anything more than that. So if they wanted me to, put on an Indian accent and be a doctor, I would have been fine. It's that they wanted me to not just be that, but also be stupid on top of that. Also be somebody who's never read a book, somebody who doesn't know how to have that was too much. So that was the
Yeah.
extra dose of the being an immigrant, being a woman of color thing that I think you get, or at least you got, when I first started, 10,
Yeah.
15 years ago, whatever that was. Yeah.
So what's what are some positive changes you've seen?
The biggest one is that you and I mean, look at us. Like, we're actually sitting here telling our story. I don't think 10 years ago this would have been a possibility. The fact that I
Yeah.
can now sit here and say what I'm saying, express my story, share my truth, without fear of retribution is the biggest change, right? And then on top of that is the fact that I'm now actually auditioning for real things, things that require me to be a person. I mean, the work that you and I did, the play that we did, what is it called, the one we were talking about? I mean, there's no way, right? There's no way we could have done this role like on stage. Maybe on stage, but definitely not on film and TV. But now I'm like, oh, this is the role I want to do on TV, right? I want to be Eliza. Like, that is something that I can actually say and know that it's not going to be a pipe dream. So that is the biggest and I think the most positive change that's happened just in the last 5 years, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's a great point you make about us sitting here talking about it. Having the confidence and courage to talk about certain things that are detrimental to our mental health, and one being the feeling of rejection while auditioning. And my idea of this episode isn't to sit here and bitch and complain for either of us to be like, oh, I don't get audition, because that's part of it. I just think the my hope is that a fellow actor of ours in our group can listen to us and be like, oh, they feel this way going into an audition. Like, it's just always nice to hear when someone else shares the same anxieties and thoughts that you do, and I think that's very important. And I think we've only been talking about roughly under 20 minutes, and you've said some wonderful little gems in the sense of like, yeah, like 10, 15 years, like, would a guy, for me, like, from my perspective, would a guy feel comfortable doing a podcast about mental health? For a guy, it's always been like rub dirt on it and you're good. um and
For us to actually have this level of honest conversation, I mean, there was no way. I mean, there's just no way. Everything was about looking good, what is it, like, you glance over and you make sure things look perfect and it doesn't
yeah,
matter what's actually going on underneath. And now we've actually peeled that and we are ready to look into the mess and then work, make real lasting changes. And I think that's a huge positive step.
yeah, no, it really is. And there's only times where I'd be comfortable telling like a few people how I feel. Now if someone, I like, I knew you for 6 straight weeks, and we follow each other on social media. I might be a little inclined to like share so much with you right off the bat, unless if you were like, well, hear about this, hear about that, then I'll open up more, because I feel like a lot, that's a thing too with all of this, is that people, for me, my biggest thing was, oh, people don't want to hear me talk, people don't want to hear me do this, people don't want to hear me bitch and complain because everyone else has stuff going on. But I think
Yeah,
it's
but
nice
let
that,
me interject you right there. Just because, everyone else has shit going on doesn't mean that what you're going through is somehow irrelevant.
yeah,
It's not, invalid. I think the
yeah,
challenge is to make space, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling and still be available for the other person and let them feel what they're feeling. I don't think you have to go, well, how dare I complain when I have food to eat? That's correct. Yes, I mean, look at what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, but you're still allowed to feel that, yes, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not doing what I want to do. I'm
yeah.
not, I'm still, I think that is a very important conversation. Um, it's so necessary in my mind to not gloss over that, to not to minimize yourself and elevate someone else.
Yeah, no, that's, man, you're just dropping gem after gem. Because you're right. Because my therapist says that, she's like, you got to stop comparing yourself, good and bad, to everybody, because a lot of people don't know what anyone's going through. Like, you really don't. Like, you could sit here and say, oh, this person has it all, but deep down, like, they might be having family issues, personal issues, relationship issues with their partner, their friends. You don't know. It's body issues. Yeah, yeah, it's something we're going to talk about down the road. Yeah. And you know it, anything I see you post on social media is like work related. No, it's good. Like, because some people literally will post like, I just had a miscarriage, or I had this, I had that, and it's just like, a part of it's a little like, I get it, it's free speech, but it's like, do I want to open up Facebook and see that right now? That's how I was feeling, but I think it's good to like share with people like how, I think being open and honest is the best. It's a little tough like to do it, you know, it's a little tough to do it like with people you don't know that well, but I think it's necessary.
Here's where yeah, there's two elements to that. Like, what I post, um like, on my social media, it's now what I call the after, right? There's the before side of it and then the after side of it,
Okay.
right?
All right.
So the before side of it, which was painful and, the stuff that we talked about, that I didn't share that much. For that, I went to therapy, right? Or spiritual therapy, and I did work on myself. So what you're seeing now is me, first of all, having lived through that crazy, being shut out, shut down, not allowed to speak kind of phase of my life. And now coming into the phase of I am here and I'm no longer embarrassed to be myself. So that's the first element. The whole oversharing on social media, I think a lot of people finally are have permission to share their pain, which is why I think we're seeing such an overload of like oversharing. So I
Yeah.
think that's why, because I totally feel, yeah, like a lot of times it's like this is great, but I'm not sure that this should be on here. Maybe this needs to be, private. Maybe this needs to be with your friends. So but I think the reason that's happening is because people, one, don't know who they can talk to, and two, they're enjoying the freedom of actually being allowed to speak.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, is why we're seeing such an overthink of like over sort of sharing. And then I think you also have to decide what phase of your life you're going to share. Like for me, I'm not really going to talk about some things that are personal to me, and no matter what happens, like I'm not going to post about it. So you do kind of have to draw that line for yourself. Okay, this is for public consumption and this is for me and for my family or for my friends. So that is where I think we're seeing a lot of people not know what to do. And with these kinds of, like, your podcast conversation, this kind of conversation hopefully will show people that it's okay to set boundaries, right? It's okay to choose what to share and what not to share. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's very very accurate. I was about to say stuff and then you covered it because you're right. No, 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 you're not. No, no, no. You don't have to apologize at all. You're saying what I want to say. You really are. Like you please don't apologize. That's not, this is what the podcast is for. You're saying everything I wanted to say in the sense of, I sit here and say, "Oh, why are they posting that?" But you're right. They might not have anyone to talk to. Like that's not, I guess that's a good problem for me to have, is like I do have people to talk to. Some people don't, so yeah, they feel the need to, write on that, the write on Facebook. There's a difference between people kind of like being, immature and starting some shit, like on, versus like just posting how they feel, and then you're like, wow, that's too much, but maybe they needed that. But yeah, going back, I guess, to like what I wanted to talk to you about today is actors facing rejection, and specific. I feel like the rejection comes the most through auditioning, because when you land a role, I don't know if when you land a role, that's, I don't know how rejected you could feel. Maybe if you could feel rejected through the cast member, maybe you're not getting along with your cast or the director or anything like that. But for me, yeah, on set, there's maybe more on set drama. But I feel like the most, like, rejection comes from auditioning. So, you know, I never auditioned for anything in person before until this year, until 2021, actually. I auditioned, yeah, I auditioned for two local theaters, local plays. One, I didn't make any cut. Like, I didn't make the second one, I made it till the final, like, decision. And the lady was like this 85-year-old director who's been doing this for like more than half her life. Yeah, has been doing it since her 20s. And she's like, I could obviously tell that you've only ever done film because you don't project. And she's like, but you have a look for it, and this and that. She's like, but I'm a little old and I just don't have the time to like dig my teeth into like working with an actor who's never been on theater before. Very honest, very real. Like, I didn't necessarily feel, yeah, I didn't feel rejected. Yeah. Oh no, you don't. I didn't feel rejected. I don't know what's worse, like submitting a video audition, just from my perspective, submitting a video audition, them not getting back to you, or them saying, yeah, we really liked it, but like, hey, you just didn't get it. I think I would rather the latter. I'd rather someone tell me, "Hey, like thank you again," and all that, but we're going in a different direction than completely like ghosting you. So how was auditioning in person for you? Like, what kind of nerves come up when you did it before COVID, or if you've done it post COVID, post 2020, I'll say.
So I think for me it's like three different levels, because when I first started as a young actor, it was a nerve-wracking experience for me. I going to the audition, prepping for it, it was like going to battle, because my nervous system would just, shut down. I don't know, like I literally remember feeling one time that my body had, like, that I had left my body just out of nervousness of like, oh my God, I'm going to be on camera and I have to audition and everybody's going to be looking at me, and this is like when you're 20, 21 years old and all that, so my initial reaction was very self-absorbed, right? How do I look? Am I good? Did they like me? Am I a good actor? Oh my God, I messed up this line, and this line
Oh,
is the reason I'm not going to get hired.
are all of those things you have in your head, are they like are they with you on a daily basis, or just like, I know we're talking about auditioning, but like the first few things you said, like, am I this, am I that, like, am I a good actor, like, do you think about that a lot, or does it just come up really like in the middle or at an audition in the beginning of it?
I think now I'm in that place because of all the work that I've done and all the, and that's going to be like, I can talk about that in detail. But now my conversation, my self talk is a lot more positive. And even if I'm like going, even when I know that I haven't gotten the role, I can I can look at it without hating myself and without it being a judgment on what I am, right?
Yeah.
The biggest problem, I think, between being an actor versus being an artist, of whether painter, musician, script writer, whatever. I think the biggest problem and the difference is that actors, we put ourselves on the line. Every time we show up, whether it's on stage, whether it's on film, we are showing up as ourselves. So we are literally telling the world it's okay to judge us, because our talent, our creativity comes through us. When you're a painter, you're painting it and you're saying, hey, look at my painting, right?
Yeah.
And you get to judge the painting, and if you don't like the painting, it's fine, I'm going to go try to make another thing, right? But for us, when somebody says we don't like your work, it's us. They're saying, we don't like your eyes, we don't like your hair, we don't like your body, we don't like your accent, we don't
Yeah.
like your talent. So it's a very, very personal form of rejection. So that's why the intensity of an audition and not hearing back from them feels so big and so personal, and it's so difficult to get over it, right? So I think that really needs to be acknowledged, that an actor's struggle is this personal, because the work we're doing is personal. We're crying on screen, we're laughing, and we're doing it either out of deep happiness or out of deep pain, and it's all incredibly personal experiences. So that's why I think an actor's struggle and the actor's rejection are so different and so huge to begin with. So once you understand and acknowledge that you are not your work, right? That the character that you're putting on screen is something that the casting and Hollywood can reject, but it's not a rejection of you or your talent.
Exactly.
So I think when you figure that out as an actor, I think that's when the anxiety starts to go away. And
And that's not easy to think that. Like, I don't know how much work you had to do to come out of the other side, because that's very tough. That it's tough to just take that all in, because you think about it really quickly. You have to, all right, you're going into an audition and you're being the most vulnerable, depending on the
yeah,
role versus, and also depending on what choices you make for that role, for
yeah,
that character. So if you think this character is a little on edge or cries, so you have to ramp up. You're always, in a previous episode we did, or depending on when this comes out, in an episode with my buddy Felix, he said, artists, maybe why they are so quote unquote thin skinned is because we are always on display for the world. I don't.
We
And
are.
he said he doesn't know any other job besides
No.
the arts and as a whole. Like you mentioned other artists, painters. An artist, if you are an artist by any means, your work is solely like you make work solely to be critiqued. Some people are like,
Yeah.
no, 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 I do it because I do it for myself and I love it. And you there's a small percentage of
Yes, you
that.
do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, you do. The reason we are an actor is because it speaks to us, right? We are artists
yes,
because it is how we interact with the world.
yeah,
But the world is now set up that every little thing we do, we're going to get critiqued on it. We're never going to
yes.
get a pass on it, right?
No. There's always going to be someone who doesn't like it. Like it goes down to the simplest of like inviting our family. I invited my family
Yeah.
to the showcase and then being like, I like this one, I didn't like that one. That actor was good. That actor, and it's just like they're. And no offense to my family, but they are just people. They are not in the thick of it. They don't know what it means. Like so but that's you know most people who watch movies are just movie watchers.
Right.
They're not movie makers, or maybe they're aspiring to be. But yeah, our whole existence is to, like, as an artist, is to be, or not all of our existence, part of our existence is to be critiqued because that's what we do. That's why we go to acting classes. That's why we, maybe pay for an acting coach. I was doing something where someone would help me. I would pay per hour of someone, um, running lines with me before an audition.
Right.
That's it too. So it's just very, very interesting. So
I mean, yes, right. Yes, we're being critiqued. But the other way to look at it is the reason we are artists is because we want to tell the emotional component of a story, right? So
mhm,
if and a lot of times when you were talking about people being ramped up, a lot of times these people who show up, like they are talking about their most personal, intimate moments, right? Like with Oprah, we know her past, right? And she came out of that past, and there's no way she didn't bring that experience with her to every job that she went out for. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's so personal, because we really are connecting with our deepest pain with the hope of helping the audiences either connect to their pain
yeah,
or to release it, right? I mean, this is an emotional connection. And I think the part of the reason it's so unstable is because emotions are so unstable. The same scene that I do can move mountains and can totally shut off someone else. I mean, I have put out my self tapes and my scenes for like casting director reviews, and the same scene that has been like, great job, I like it, I like what you did, was like, I didn't like the lighting, I didn't like that you laughed too much on that line. That's not it's That's what it is. It's a business of opinions. Who's right, who's
yeah.
wrong? But I'm the one,
Everyone has
at the
one. Yeah,
receiving end of it, right?
everyone has an opinion, though. Everybody, So it's more like, it's yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. It's interesting to navigate through it. What keeps you wanting to audition then? If you've ever felt rejected, what's the spark in it? And it might be an obvious question, but I would love to hear, Lily's like reasoning to keep moving on, keep auditioning.
Like you said, first thing is, because I took the spiritual path. So with every kind of rejection that I got, it became the impetus to sort of connect to myself and my authenticity in a much more real way. So, and then come back out into the world. So there was this cycle of like cleansing and then sort of appearing on the world stage, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah,
So one component was just that I was on this journey of healing myself, really. So the audition became the thing that allowed me to move forward. It wasn't the most happy journey, that I took, but that was the journey that, and it ended up being. So I didn't even have to think about, do I even want to do this, right? Because I was just an automatic thing. Um, what really keeps me going is the fact that I this is what I've wanted to do in my life. I mean, I grew up wanting to be an actor. My whole identity really has been about performing. When I was a little kid, I used to love to dance, and then somehow dancing became acting, acting became writing, writing. So writing became speaking. It's just been growing. So I really don't know what else to be. And then there's the narcissistic reason, which is that I don't want to lose. I mean, I don't know, it's like I have given most of my life at this point in pursuit of this profession, and I want to come out on the other side victorious. So that's literally what, keeps me going.
No, that's yeah, that I think there's always that little voice in your head, everyone's head, like, like to not prove people wrong, but to be like, keep going. And like you basically said, like it was all in your DNA, like it's been in your DNA since you were a kid, to perform, to act, you mentioned it's gone from acting to writing to all that. So I think that's really good that, auditioning and feeling rejected through auditions hasn't, stopped you yet. Can you recall the first time you ever felt like rejected in an audition, and then what was your response to that, whether it be like a response to them or like your like bounce back response moment, I guess.
No, no, I was definitely not somebody who bounced back. I had a sort of a cumulative effect of it. I didn't feel rejected right away, but like after a few years of doing it, going to the auditions, and here's what was happening. I was being told in acting classes that I have potential, that I'm talented, that I'm an intuitive actress, but I would go out into the real world and not get hired on anything. No auditions, no jobs, no nothing, right? So after like 2 3 years of going through that, there was this huge thing that was obviously building up inside of me. And for me, that became like overeating and gaining weight. So that's how that manifested. All of that rejection early on manifested in me. I also then went from one extreme to the other, where one, like, I gained a ton of weight, and then I lost a ton of weight. And when I gained ton of weight, I was just eating nothing but like crap, like just total shit food. And then when I lost a lot of weight, I was eating nothing but protein, and that also destroyed my body. So that I did like solid damage to like my body. That's how I dealt
Because
with
of wow.
of initial yeah, that was my initial rejection handling system.
Wow, that's pretty intense, actually. Like to because I think we all go, or most of us go to food for comfort. There's comfort, just in times of intense, sorrow and stress. I think, yeah, we go to food and alcohol and everything like that. So how did you come out the other side? Like how'd you realize, like, well, I'm doing this to my, you know I guess how'd you piece it together? Where like, oh, I gained weight because I'm eating because of this, or like, I don't know, like, how did you kind of overcome that? Because you just seem so much like I'm Lily Shaw. Like, this is who I am. Like, you're very much like, you know who you are. I feel like some people, yeah, I'm not even gonna ask your age. I'm in my mid 30s and I'm still like, who the fuck's Chris? Like, really, like there's some times where I'm like, I don't know who I am. So how did you get to the point of like feeling so like depressed and lost because of audition, and now you just seem to completely own it?
This is the whole I think for me the wake up call was my body. I mean, I was like 27, 28 years old, and my hair was falling out. I had lost a ton of weight. Like my hormones were, completely
Mhm.
out of, like, just wacky, out of shot. So my body was my wake up call. So I went through the phase, literally had this, and by this time I was already doing spiritual stuff. I was listening to a lot of spiritual leaders, so my thoughts were changing, and I
Okay.
was learning to see the world in a creation spiritual way versus like a competitive, capitalistic way. And so that combined with like what the hell is going on with me became the thing. So I literally was like, I can't do that, I can't be 30 pounds overweight and I can't have hair falling out of my head like that, so that became the catalyst, and I stepped into the phase of I need to get into balance, and that was the first time I understood that life has to be in balance. And I think Deepak Chopra, Oprah Winfrey, Abraham Hicks was like such huge influences in my for me, because
Mhm.
they were doing this. They were living successful lives that also, at least on the outside, seemed like they had their shit together. So I went into Ayurvedic treatments, which is basically a holistic kind of a treatment. It comes out of India, and that became my way back, where I first started to little by little heal my body. Then I decided to drop out of acting classes that were all about book your job. And I actively searched for an acting teacher who was spiritual based. And that's when I found Natalie Roy. And then came COVID. And in COVID, I found Heather Brigette, who was my next coach. And with Natalie also came Jen. Jen
Okay.
was the first woman who showed faith in my work and in my talent. And so that was a huge, and that's something that I really want to talk about, is having the right people around you. Because without those coaches, I wouldn't have been quite so solid and quite so like, this is me and this is what I'm doing the way that I'm now.
Yeah.
And in COVID, I met Heather, and Heather really gave me the freedom to own my past and embrace and understand that the crap I went through, was not because of me, but it was because the system was designed so that I hate myself. And Black Lives Matter movement happened, Me Too happened. So that all of that like 5-year process really, really just came together for me in a huge way, where I was like, fuck this shit. I'm going to own my ass. I'm going to show up the way that I want to show up. And, it's time to, be like, I'm a tiger, hear me roar. And that was like it, but it was not a small journey back. It took almost 5 years. I'm not going to lie.
Wow. Yeah, no, I don't, I don't really I never got that deep into it. I don't have a lot of confidence as just in general. I just don't. I'll just say that. I'm not even like, oh, as an artist, but I just really. Well, no. Well, I appreciate that, but no. There's times where I'll end the class. I'm like, oh, like, Lily and Jordan, specifically like my scene partners. I'll be like, they're out acting me, and I'm not. It's never like an anger or jealousy. No. It's never an anger or jealousy, but it's like, man, like, I think it's more like, we talk a lot about like imposter syndrome. Like, I think it's more like that. It's more like that, like. But I think about that a lot, and it's tough. So I think for me, I've psyched myself out of going to in person auditions like completely. Like, I was very shocked. I went to the two theater ones. They weren't musicals. I can't sing or dance, so they were more so like, more narrative theater projects. And I felt really confident in the first one, and I didn't get it, which was it was fine, because it was like, at least I did it. At least I went out there. The second one, I told her, I was like, I just at first she's like, do you have the confidence? Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, I've never done theater, so I'm not feeling confident, because if I'm most likely going to be acting alongside someone who has done local theater their entire life, and I'm just in here thinking I can do it. But yeah, no, I think it's a lot, and your journey seems extremely fucking like inspiring, because you went from, like you said, like losing hair, gaining weight, like stress adds to that. Like, you know, yeah, no, my hair has thinned a lot because I feel like all I do is stress. Like really. And then, yeah, your body, body's fluctuating here and there. But like you mentioned, having good people around you, I think that's important. I think having people, family, friends, kind of be like, the term is like, give them their flowers. Like, I think that's a very important thing to do. I think, I've said this over and over. I appreciate like if you were to comment on my work versus someone else because it's coming from a peer. You know, it's coming from someone who's within the industry. So it kind of means, it kind of means a lot more to me than if both mean a lot, but I think it means more coming from someone who kind of knows how hard it gets into doing it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's very what happens is because regular people, civilians, really can't understand the everyday ins and outs of just like basically surviving as an actor. You know, it's just it
Yeah.
takes a whole level of skill just to wake up and be like, okay, I'm gonna do this one more day. You know, it's not like you said
Yeah.
for the faint of heart, you know.
You know, every day is something. It's
No 2 days are alike. I mean,
no.
you know, in 10 years, I don't think there have been any that have been like, oh, this is the same thing. I'm living in a routine. There's no 9 to 5, you know?
Yeah, no, there is absolutely no 9 to 5 like you just said. And it's, I don't know what time, I don't know for you if you have a ritual of like, getting up and you know, for me, like when before I had my 9 to 5, I was very much like independent. So it's like, all right, I tried to like do this, try to go on auditions, try to work as much as possible. It's not easy, and I don't know how you are. I need structure. I need some structure. Even if I don't have a 9 to 5, I need to like at least plan out my day, right? Yeah, you seem like that type of person. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think planning out is the best you can do, especially if you are an independent artist. So yeah,
I was like very much not about like I was like a freewheeling, free dealing kind of girl. You know, wake up, do what I want to do. I'm not in the mood today, and I'm just not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna learn my lines. You know, there was very much like, oh, I'm an independent actor. You know,
yeah,
no, 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 no. You need a fucking structure.
yes,
Like you need a ritual. You need to sit down every day and do something acting related, and then you need to go out and do a day job. You know, where people are going to ask you crap like, have I seen you in anything? And then you have to like answer that question
hmm,
and not like
oh
not feel
yeah,
offended by that, you know. So yeah, you need rituals, you need structure, you need people around you who are going to lift you up, because everyday civilian people who don't live this
hmm,
life, they don't understand the mental burden doing this job does to you. So you really do need somebody, like you said, who understands what it feels
everything.
to be in those shoes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's all of it. It's I think every aspect of the journey of an actor is can be really like detrimental to your mental health. That's why it's everyone wants to joke about certain celebrities who are quote unquote crazy, but I mean, on a smaller scale, it's like, geez, like I'm going through it. Like I couldn't imagine with my face being in the press and all that money and all that fame. Excuse me, that adds on to it. Yeah, yeah, yes, they see you. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. So really quickly, have you gone into auditions and have seen some of your like friends and you're like kind of torn because you're like, I want this role, but I also want them to. I want them to succeed. Like it's just a little weird. Has that happened to you?
It's like, well, how are they going to decide, right? Like who the best person is. And it's
Yeah.
such a mixed bag, because then you see the actor who gets the job, and then you get to see them, you know, do the role, and you're like, well, I was better than that. And then if they're your friend, then you're just like, oh my god, like this is my
Mm.
friend.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want, but oh my god, like it's so tough. And I think for me the bigger challenges is like when I see the audition people that like have auditioned, the roles that I've auditioned for, and then I see other actors do it on screen, and then I have to somehow convince myself that their performance was better. For me, that's the challenge. I'm like, oh
Even
no, they got it because they did. I was like, I don't know what they did, why they got it, and I didn't.
that's
That's when you
funny.
really have to like pretend to be the bigger person.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that in the industry. One more question before we go is: could you give a piece of advice? You've been giving advice all throughout the episode, but could you give one piece of advice for maybe that actor who, such as myself, who hasn't really gone into a lot of in person auditions? I feel like they're getting back somewhat. But any advice you can give to someone who's just starting out or who hasn't done them, like I said myself, like what's one piece of advice you can give to someone to kind of like calm your nerves before going into an audition, to where it's like this isn't the end all be all?
My biggest advice really would be to not cast someone else in the role while you're in the waiting room. Don't be like, oh my God, this guy is so much in shape, he's gonna get this role. And I'm not. Like, do not cast yourself out of the role. Understand and recognize that you're there because you have something to offer. It might not be what the other guy with like a six pack has to offer, but you might bring some humanity to it. You might bring some body to it that maybe this other guy won't. So don't write yourself out while you're waiting in the waiting room. The waiting room is a dream killer because you see
Yeah.
everybody who's better than you, prettier than you, hotter than you, and you're just like, why the hell am I even here? So the trick is to create a ritual. Like for me, it's now affirmations. Like I'll like listen to music that I love. I'll have some of my iPods going so that I'm not distracted by what I'm seeing in the waiting room. That would be my big advice.
That's a great answer. That's an answer I haven't heard yet, honestly, during this topic, and I think it's a very important one, to remember, because it's like you can, because also that takes you out of that takes you out of the game and the zone. I feel like, right? Like, yeah, yeah. It's like your focus is not on getting this role. It's more so, okay, who's this person and are they auditioning for the same exact role? Because I don't know. Like I said, I've done two in person auditions and no one really looked like me. I don't know if you've gone to auditions where you've obviously everyone has looking for a specific role or whatever, or even if you
I
look
mean,
and you're
for
like,
me, early on, just to like one final thought. For me,
yeah,
early on,
no,
I used to be the only like non-white person, non-white actor in a room full of like white actresses, and that used to play havoc with me because I would just be like, "What? Well, why am I even here?" And there were a few times when I got cast because I wasn't white, and there were a few times when I got rejected because I wasn't white. So that was such a hard-earned lesson for me. It's like you're there because you belong.
I agree. And for me, I'm really not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just trying to practice what I preach. Um, with people in regards to, like you said, you not getting roles specifically for because of your ethnicity and how you look. I kind of really hope that that's just something that stops, because I remember two things really quickly. I was casting for like one of my films that was loosely based off my family, and someone came at me on Facebook and was like, "Why you're only casting white people?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't really think I had to get into this, but this is what it is." And and then they didn't say anything after that. I was like, it's based on an Italian family. No one in my family is any other ethnicity but Italian or or white. And then there's moving forward after that on casting call sheets for my projects, I just write like open to weight, height, and race, unless if I'm looking for something specific, but leave it open. So because I feel like when you're very much like, all right, I want this 90-pound blonde, you're missing out on all the other talent that you could possibly get. The one thing that it gets me a lot of like auditions, like for my projects, are that line, and like obviously paid, but it's more so like every all is welcome, and if you're funny, you're gonna get the role versus how you look. I think that's the thing that we are transitioning into now. I feel like there's always going to be something where like, oh man, he's hot, she's hot, we're gotta cast him no matter what. I feel like that was very much a, a thing back in the day. Now, like I said, you could see, like how many times you see a show or a movie that has your at quote unquote abnormal lead, so it's I think it's you have to put that there so you get the best talent possible, because the best talent is not always going to be like 110 pounds and 6'4" and it's just every artist comes in all different shapes and sizes, so it's like I think casting directors need to realize that.
I think there is also a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, wait, commercials. Yeah, and even like same sex couples. It's yeah, no, it's interesting. It's something that I didn't think was, it was so like I guess we missed the mark on that one kind of thing. It's so like how much it was so white, I guess you could say, versus like you see so many commercials with so many different, like you said. I saw a commercial the other day for like medicine for people who for men who have for gay men who have AIDS, and then the actress from Schitt's Creek doing a commercial like where her character is basically living in a woman's vagina. Not to be disgusting, but it's about like it's about things for women's menstrual cycle. Like these are commercials that I feel like are if our grandparents were children, like if they saw that, they're like, what is that? Like hell would be, like, I mean, Earth would be burning down to the ground, because it's like, how could you have that on TV? And now it's like so much, you're allowed to say so much and do so much, and I think that's great.
And that's why I think it's because we are allowed, or rather allowing ourselves, is why we can talk openly about mental health. We can talk
Yes.
openly about rejection, because we are now acknowledging that just looking perfect isn't the name of the game.
No.
Being perfect is also necessary, or at least striving to be, right? Striving to be the best version of yourself, and how big a role emotional and spiritual health plays in that. We're
Perfect.
definitely taking huge steps in the right direction, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's only gonna get better, I think.
Let's hope so. Well, we're going to make sure, you and I.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Well, yeah. And if the youth, the younger, I think that's pretty important too, is to really educate, educate and pass down, you pass down what you think is right and wrong, and you make sure, but like I think there should be a general understanding that, on an entertainment level, like what Harvey Weinstein did was wrong. What producers do, certain things, like, if they affect you mentally, if they come onto you sexually, anything like that is wrong. You don't, so yeah, that's a whole other topic. But yeah, no, just yeah, like you said, you hope that it's becomes a better place. And when I have kids, and I gonna try to do my best to be like, hey, if you're not feeling, like, why are you crying, why are you sad, why are you upset? Some people might look at that as like, oh, you're too easy on them, but I don't think kids respond to anger and violence, so, and I think that the world would be a lot better if, I don't want to, because like I said, I'm in therapy, and I tell my parents, and they're like, oh, I should have gone. I'm not saying it's not too late for them, but they're packing 60 to 70 years worth of you're unpacking so much, like me. I'm like, I started going 2 years ago. I felt like, a little like, okay, I can start unpacking stuff as a 30-year-old that that I wasn't able to deal with when I was younger. Yeah. So
it's not, I mean, to like, first of all, to open up, to have that kind of faith and trust, and to open up your vulnerability to a complete and total stranger. And
It's not
it's
easy.
so it's not easy. It's really not. And whether it's conventional therapy, whether it's like Reiki or spiritual therapy, you're laying down your stuff, and
Yep.
you're saying, I mean, asking for help, man. I mean, it's
That's not
so
easy.
like vilified.
Yeah, it is not easy at all. I really don't know anyone. Like, I don't, it's not easy. I hate asking for help, but I've come to the point where it's like, no, it's okay to not know everything, you know? So, would you like to plug anything before we end this? Like I said, I don't know when this specifically is coming out, but do you have anything, in mind that you would like to plug, for people to check out?
I'm doing like my own show, not a podcast, but like just a live show on Instagram. It's called Live with Lily. So if people want to check that out and leave some engagements, that would be awesome, because again, my intention there is to bring people like coaches and women who have helped me come on this after side of myself. So I'm hoping that, in bringing them on, I'll be able to share my journey and hopefully inspire people and be like, okay, you can kind of take some steps to move into and become a better version of yourself. So I would say to follow me on Instagram and to check out those episodes.
And what's your Instagram handle?
It's at I am Lily Shaw.
Cool. Well, we appreciate Lily. We're gonna have you back on for another episode to talk about, body image. I know we talked a little bit about it here, but we'll dive more into that for sure. Thanks for coming on and just dropping knowledge. I appreciate you very much. And until next time.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's really an honor talking to you and to like hearing your story. It's like you said, it's just you never know what's going on with people. And it's just, I
No.
really appreciate you creating this safe space for, artists to have real, honest conversations.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. Till next time.
All right, sounds good.
Once again, this is Where Is My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. I'm host and producer of the podcast, Christopher Orangeo. All episodes will be available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. Once again, this is Chris Orangeo, and thank you for supporting.